My name is Anna Marie Wagner, and this is The Dish. Oh, you're generating a lot of data. For the past 20, 30 years in this industry, we've had this sort of culture clash. It's going to be messy. It's going to be quick. We're going to iterate fast.
You're our expert, one of our experts that we look for.
Welcome to The Dish, where we invite entrepreneurs to share their insights into the next generation of biotech companies. I'm Johannes Fruehauf, founder and chairman at LabCentral and CEO of BioLabs. After more than a decade of working with entrepreneurs and supporting more than 1,200 startups, I'm here to bring you stories from our ecosystem. Are you ready to dish?
Hello everyone, and welcome back to The Dish. Today we're thrilled to be joined by Anna Marie Wagner. She's a real trailblazer at the intersection of AI and life sciences. She began her career as a tech investor with Bain Capital before making the leap into biotech with Ginkgo Bioworks. At Ginkgo, Anna Marie led strategy, partnerships, and commercial efforts around AI, playing a key role in the landmark partnership with Google Cloud and the record-breaking $1.6 billion IPO that Ginkgo did. Now, Anna Marie is stepping into the founder role with her own stealth mode startup. We won't talk too much about that. Before we get going, we ask all of our guests to bring an orange object. Anna Marie, what did you bring us today?
I am doing some product placement, it would appear, but I brought my very favorite tea. It is a cinnamon rooibos. And the reason I like it is that when you let it oversteep for a while, so at the end of this interview, the apples that are in it dissolve and it makes it kind of sweet. And so it tastes like apple cider.
Awesome. We'll taste it and give you an update afterwards. You're a good saleswoman. Do you have shares in that?
I do not have shares in that company, and sadly they have closed all of their US locations, so you have to order it online. It's a real pain in the butt.
Okay. Well, we'll see what comes of it. We recently announced that LabCentral, we are partnering with C10 Labs to create the first AI BioHub here. And you'll be helping us with that as a strategic advisor. How did your career and life sciences and AI start to interact? How did you come into this field?
Yeah, well, I thought I was going to be an academic scientist. I studied molecular biology and systems biology, but realized very quickly that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life at a bench. I don't think I had very good hands. And I switched to math. And so my academic background sort of already shaped that, although, as you mentioned, I sold my soul to the dark side for about a decade doing investing. But when I came to Ginkgo, I think Ginkgo was always really focused on the data generation side as in its approach to really hard research questions in the life sciences. And so, I think we were primed to think about AI, and I just very naturally gravitated towards, both sides of that equation, and so found myself here today. And the funny thing is, I'll just add, the world experts right now at this intersection have a handful of years of experience.
Right.
This is AI is not a new field. Life sciences are not a new field, but that bilingualism is still pretty rare. Yeah. And so in some ways, it's actually pretty easy to get yourself up to speed relative to the average person in the space.
Yeah, we are excited about getting started at LabCentral, and I feel we're not yet too far behind.
No,
so
not at all.
we look forward to it. You guys were working at Ginkgo with AI before it became sort of a big trendy thing.
Yeah.
How did the team approach AI there differently from what most in the industry do?
Yeah, it was funny. We didn't really talk about AI because we always thought AI was this weird hype word that didn't really mean anything. But the reality was we were using ML for a long time. And that was because the approach that Ginkgo used was to generate huge data sets around the programs that we were delivering through lab automation. That was really the big bet that Ginkgo made. And the critique of that at the time was always, oh, it's just brute force experimentation. You're just throwing spaghetti against the wall. But then when the ChatGPT moment arrived, suddenly it was like, oh, you're generating a lot of data. We want that data. That data is the fuel of AI. And so then it became much easier for us to explain what it was that we had been doing for several years.
Yeah, because you had the automation.
We had the automation and the data generation capabilities.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Where do you see the biggest gap between sort of what's possible and what's being used today?
Yeah, there are a couple things that really stand out to me. The first is what I describe as a last mile problem, where the capabilities that are out there today are already really impressive, but you see this paralysis sometimes in organizations because the pace of change is also so fast that it's really easy to feel like you have technical debt the minute that you implement something. And getting an entire organization fluent in the new technologies can be hard. So that's one. The other one is more on the technical side, where you see a ton of talent and horsepower going to what I would describe as top of the funnel problems. So amazing work happening on target ID, amazing work happening on molecular design. But when you talk to pharma, those are usually not the core problems that they are complaining about. It's all the rest of that long, skinny funnel that takes 10 years to get a drug approved.
What would those applications be later down the road?
I mean, again, it's the boring stuff, like assay development, running really good animal studies, stratifying a clinical trial the right way, manufacturing, all of this stuff that is critical to the success of a drug, but is not getting nearly the same level of attention from the leaders at the frontier of AI.
Why is that?
In some ways, I think it's a data problem. It's a lot easier to think about generating huge amounts of data genomics. We can go get a lot of protein sequences pretty easily, so that feels like the lower hanging fruit. It's a lot harder to collect a bunch of data that is largely sitting in private companies in disorganized formats to train models in those areas.
Right. Is it also the types of people that are different at the cutting edge, sort of at the genomic side of things? They're probably more open to these new technologies. If I'm thinking about my colleagues that I love, but who do regulatory science and who do clinical trials, they have to be so much more regimented and so much less open to the new.
I do think there is a cultural element at play, but I think that's changing. I do think it's much more about it's again, how easy is the implementation? Do I have to myself be an engineer in order to get this stuff working in my domain, or has somebody already made that easy for me? And I think in a lot of these areas, no one's made it easy for them yet. And so it still feels like the tools that are accessible to me as a non-technical person in my domain still aren't cutting it for me, because no one's really served that up to me in a way that is directly relevant.
So interface also will be a big problem to solve. How do you make sure that you have on your team the right skill mix to implement these new solutions?
Yeah. I think one shift that's happening, well, maybe the first thing I'll say is bilingualism is really important still, right? So having folks that are fluent on the science and fluent on the computational side of things is really critical. We've, for the past 20, 30 years in this industry, we've had this sort of culture clash between the biologists and the engineers who are like, why are you guys so stupid? Why are you so inefficient? I think that's coming together in a really cool way right now with AI, where AI feels much more biological than computer science ever did before. Like, it is this sort of amorphous, unpredictable substrate. And so those cultures are coming together now, which is really helpful. The other thing, though, that I think folks really need is still that engineer's mindset, as opposed to the scientist mindset of, it's going to be messy, it's going to be quick, we're going to iterate fast, versus let's go figure out how to build exactly the right thing that we need for this problem space. And so having a balance there does continue to be really important.
Are there places where young people should go to learn both sides of the brain to study? I know MIT is good at that, but are there other places?
Yeah, I mean, certainly on the academic side, certainly MIT and Stanford are leading there. When I was in college, and it's incredible to see where it's gone, I participated in this program called iGEM, which at the time was this kind of weird fringe, 30 teams, just doing some crazy biological engineering work. Now it's, like 400, 500 teams across the world. And I mean, the high school kids these days are doing work that is way more advanced than anything I was doing when I was still studying this space. And so programs like that, I think, are increasingly really interesting ways for younger people to build the science, the engineering, the computation, the entrepreneurial bent too, and all of that, I think, is really
I think we've had a dozen or so companies from people here who came through iGEM.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's such an amazing, impactful program.
It really
Are you
is.
still involved with them?
I was just in Paris for the Jamboree in October.
That's amazing.
It's incredible.
Great. So you do that, and we know that you also teach a course at HBS.
This is just for fun, but yes.
On startups, and sort of it's on startups and failure and embracing that and not sort of being too afraid of it. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, and so I'm sort of annoyed because the name of the course is Avoiding Startup Failure. And I really wish it was just called Startup Failure, because every case that we teach is a failed company. And in almost every single situation, we have the founder come to class. And so our students meet these entrepreneurs who saw a problem, tried really hard to run at it, and failed. And obviously the point of the class is to teach them the HBS frameworks on the mistakes that were made so that they can hopefully avoid them. But I think a big part of it, and certainly my secret agenda with it, is it's just exposure therapy. Failure is a part of life, and in an environment like that, you take a lot of type A folks who really haven't failed at anything before, and a lot of them want to go off and start a company, and most of those will fail. Just statistically, most of them will fail in some way, shape, or form. And more importantly, they'll have moments that feel like failure, that aren't actually failure.
They're learning moments.
And it's about building their grit and resilience to get through those moments so that they don't confuse the natural hard times of starting a company with actual failure.
So important. I often describe startups as just like experiments in the real world.
Yeah.
And as scientists, we accept that we have to redo an experiment all the time because we didn't get this right or that right. And in startup is not much different. And so helpful for people to see that and learn that. Do you have those learnings in your own startup journey as well, or is it still early? Or
I have plenty of moments of failure both behind me and ahead of me to learn from. But I do think, in some ways it's actually the inspiration for the company we're starting now, is that you do learn so much more from failure than from success. But culturally and as an industry, we don't talk nearly enough about our failures. We publish the one time the experiment worked, and that is not nearly as informative to the reader and to the students of your work as understanding that jagged path that got you to that result.
And what you learned from it and how you're building on it. Yeah, totally. I totally agree. Looking forward, now we are going to do this BioHub and we're going to learn a ton of things. You're our expert, one of our experts that we look for. So what are you most excited about for, like, what's AI going to bring in for the future of biotech?
One of the things we talk a lot about is how do you help scientists and really everyone in the world operate at the top of license, right? So in the medical field, you talk about your license to perform surgery, for example. When you're doing surgery, you're operating at the top of your license. When you're doing paperwork, you're not. And in the life sciences, when you're debugging a protocol, you're not operating at the top of your license. When you're designing a new experiment to discover something new, you are. And so how do we leverage these tools to help more people operate at the top of their license and really spend their time thinking about the next steps and not wrestling with the pain in between.
That's cool. That's cool. Enabling, empowering, and sort of liberating the scientist or the researcher to do their best work.
And I think a lot of that is, as we were talking about earlier, how do we focus AI on the unsexy problems that we still spend 80% of our time working on, rather than just, we designed a new molecule that's never existed before, which is, it's amazing. It's amazing what it can do, but using these really powerful tools to solve the problems people are dealing with every single day, I'm really excited about.
Reducing friction. So one of the things we talk about LabCentral is we want to reduce friction in people's lives and scientific endeavors, and hopefully that's going to.
I mean, it's an amazing example because, like the last thing that a young startup with 3 people needs is to deal with lab ops, is to deal with all the stuff that is in the background of having a facility, and so you bringing that is amazing.
We are always asking a final question that is sort of, if you were to be able to meet your own younger self, what advice would you give that person? What advice are you giving young people entering the field today?
I think I would say just be less afraid. I think certainly through my academic career and the beginning of my professional career, I think I made a lot of decisions that were following the herd, that were safe, that were the prestigious thing to do, and that didn't scratch any itches that I personally had around what I wanted to be, what I wanted to build, and what I would be genuinely proud of. And that fear of failure, that fear of being different, I think held me back. And so I wish for our young people that, with all the constraints that are real in life, that we find ways to be fearless.
Cool. That's a great message to end on. Now we'll taste your tea.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Tell me what you think.
We should make a kitchen show.
Cooking is a lot like
It's
science.
interesting.
Cooking is a lot like science.
Very nice. I'll keep it.
All right.
So thank you all for tuning in for The Dish today with Annemarie Wagner. Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Thank you for the tea.
You're welcome.
And I hope you'll join us again for the next episode of The Dish.